the fun off. Thank you.
All 10 announced GOP candidates.
Davis, and I am here likewise because I was asked and because I made a commitment on your show. I must admit to you that it's pleasurable and a little bit different to be in this kind of an environment with my colleagues who are here, because the last time I was in an event of this nature, it was the NAACP convention, and I was the only Republican that showed up. So I'm glad that my colleagues have joined me on the stage tonight. And I'm especially glad to be here to be able to talk about something that was mentioned during the original introduction. Something you said, I believe, Tavis, when you talked about, we're here to talk about the promise of America. And that is what drives me. That's, I think, probably all of my colleagues up here. That is exactly why we can get up, do the next event, go get on the plane, do the next event. It is because the promise of America is something that we all have to actually share in, and we have to explain to everybody that's listening to us, how we would fulfill that. What would we do for that promise of America? To every single person in this room and for every person listening on the radio and television tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Certainly that's why I am here to do so.
Thank you. Congressman Hunter.
Thank you, Tavis.
Thank you. First of all, I do believe that there are a number of Republican presidents who have done a great deal for black Americans because they've done something for all Americans. Ronald Reagan, from my point of view, did something for every single American by increasing individual liberty. You know, it is, I think, destructive to only talk about the politics of race and suggest that all of the actions taken or all of the specific programs that we identify and talk about tonight should be focused on race. It really does not do a service, I think, to us as Americans. And again, that promise to America. And I'll tell you this, one of the things that I will do as President of the United States to increase the economic opportunities for every American, and especially people in the lower economic rung of the ladder in America, is to reduce the flow of illegal immigration into this country, which depresses wage rates for the lowest income earners in this country. And it's got to be dealt with forcefully. And I tell you, yes, black America, brown America, white America, all will be enhanced by actually enforcing our laws.
Congressman Hunter.
The question is, what do we do about that situation today? Because we can all rave about how we're going to secure the borders, which I'm glad to hear, by the way, these newfound positions with regard to the borders and its security. Great. Happy they're there. But you're right. What the real issue is, what do we do about the people here? And I will tell you, when you use phrases like rounding them up, I mean, they are improperly used in this respect, because we're not talking about rounding people up. If you, in fact, simply enforce the law, I know that's a scary topic sometimes and a controversial attitude to take, but enforcing the law, especially the law against hiring people who are here illegally, you will see people returning home voluntarily. It is happening today in states all over this nation. That's exactly the key to this. You do not have to round people up. You simply have to enforce the law. Thank you. It was mentioned earlier, and I certainly agree with the fact that, first of all, there are far too many criminal statutes at the federal level. The Constitution establishes the roles of the federal government and the state government. We have taken on far too many things at the federal level, especially drug laws, mandating certain penalties. I do not believe that is the responsibility of the federal government. That should be at the state level, and I would certainly not support, and as a way of reform, by the way, I would move the federal government out of that whole business. Now let me say one thing other that I think that has to be mentioned here. When you talk about the crime rate, so much of this is connected to another huge problem, and that you cannot take apart, you cannot look at just in segments, and that is this. The family, what is happening to the black family in America today, and what has been happening for the last 40 years is a disgrace. It is because, of course, as I said earlier, the welfare state has helped create this. But you know what? The welfare state cannot be it can be the breadwinner, but it cannot give you morals, values, or discipline. And that's what it takes in America.
Recently, a push to give the District of Columbia voting representation was defeated because of heavy Republican opposition. In addition, many voting rights advocates are worried about rigid voter ID laws, which require a photo ID like a driver's license. Are you concerned that some eligible voters will be denied the right to vote simply because they don't have a driver's license?
Let's first take the issue that you mentioned with regard to the District of Columbia. It is not a state, therefore not entitled to representation as a state. If in fact it becomes the desire of the country to have that kind of representation, then the district, then it should be split up, and the portion that was ceded to the federal government by Virginia should go back to Virginia. The portion that was ceded by Maryland should go back to Maryland. Then they would be represented by states. Also, with regard to voting opportunities and the use of a photo ID, let me tell you that it is really not that difficult to obtain, and I don't think that we're asking too much of people when they're doing something that is one of the most sacred duties of anybody in this society, to actually show that they are the person who they say they are. I don't think driver's license, you can get a photo ID, a state ID, you can do it relatively easily.
Thank you, sir. Congressman Hunter.
The most important thing to remember about your health care is it's your health care. You have a personal responsibility here. Every single person does, to do everything they can to stay healthy. Most of the things that happen to us are lifestyle problems, and really, I mean, there are things that we do to ourselves that cause us to then have to access the healthcare industry. We have to first look to ourselves individually. And again, it's kind of a scary thing I get to say, but you know, individual responsibility does work also in healthcare. And yes, I believe, by the way, in the expansion of community of health savings accounts, because it does put you in the connection. It's you and you're the consumer and the doctor, and there's nobody in between, and that's good. Also believe, by the way, that you should be able to get your drugs from any place that, in fact, it's cheaper to get drugs. If it's cheaper to get drugs in Canada, get drugs from Canada. It's okay with me. You shouldn't be blocking that. Again, individual freedom, expand into individual freedom, and take some individual responsibility for your own health care.
Thank you very much.
Of the Congress when it comes to war, it is 1, declare it, 2, fund it, or 3, not fund it. That's it. You know what? When you talk about the number of bills that we killed because attempts to sort of end this thing. Well, every one of them has inside of it all these provisions about how we have to fight the war, how many people can be dispatched at any particular point in time, and who they can fight. I will say this. That the founders of this country knew very well that what would happen to us if we ended up with 535 generals in the Congress of the United States. And that is, you lose wars. You need a commander-in-chief. And you know what? It is every right to be involved in it. It has every right to talk about this and to condemn it if you don't agree with it. But you know what? It ends up with this. If you don't want it, don't fund it. But you cannot micromanage it from the Congress of the United States.
All of your things back and forth, and I think coming back
What'd you think about the debate?
Well, this was really one of the better ones because, first of all, there were few of us here, so you know, you would get a little more time to answer. Not time to answer, but more questions. That was good. It went relatively quickly, it seemed to me, and I felt good about it. You know what I felt best about is that you could say exactly what you think, and you know, I did not, you know, resort to pandering, which is something I see happening constantly in these debates. And I'm sick of it. I hope most Americans are too. So, anyway, I thought it was pretty good.
Outstanding.